Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Domestique Hot Seat podcast, where we go one-on-one with a pro cyclist trying to crack them open like a little walnut. We've got a super exciting nut to crack today, a pistachio or a macadamia, if you will, and I'm actually a little bit nervous about this one. So before we crack on, carrying the metaphor like an African swallow carrying a coconut, I would appreciate if you could hit subscribe on whatever platform that you're on. We really want to send this into the stratosphere, and the metrics help. We're getting good responses from the pod, but we really would like to be able to break into these algorithms. So without further ado, get your nutcrackers ready and let's get cracking. And that is it. I'm done. Today's guest is from the land of the long white cloud. She's a national champion, an Olympian. She rode the 2025 Giro d'Italia, and all this at the ripe age of 23. She has been locked out of her house, and we were unsure whether this was going to happen. So can I introduce to everyone Kim Cadzow? Kim, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So do you want to run everyone through the saga just briefly? We've sort of been over it, but I think it's worth telling.
Yeah, so usual was in Girona and left my house with the wrong set of keys. I didn't realize, and then got back, went to open the front door at 10:30 last night, and realized it was definitely not the right set of keys. So then I sat on the stones outside on the cathedral for a while, pondered whether I should get a flight back to New Zealand, and then phoned a teammate, spent the night on her couch, and was back by 10 a.m.
Judging by what you've said about when Girona wakes up, it seems like you might have actually been better off getting a flight back to New Zealand. Might have been the more expedient option. It was your bike lock keys, you said, right?
Yep. Yeah.
How are they in any way similar to your house keys?
They're about like this big, and this house is like this big.
It's a city that you're not familiar with. Also, you're in Andorra, you said. So was that a bit scary?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I did live here for a couple of years, and I'm lucky that a lot of the cyclists from my team, and I've got a lot of friends here, so I reached out to a few people, and a few people actually came and gave me a hand. I was just worried that, luckily I'm not in swimming anymore or triathlon, because otherwise they all would have been asleep. But luckily the cyclists stay up till like 12 o'clock, so
really,
someone would let me in.
Yeah, I guess keeping those pro hours, it must be nice. So, look, super glad that you managed to get here. And we start off with a series of quick fire questions. You've not seen these, so these are all unseen by you. You've got a minute to try and answer as many as you can. I've got 18, I think. So hopefully you don't do more than 18, or I'll have to start coming up with them on the fly. Stora is in the lead. Oh, no. It's Spratty in the lead with 10, Stora with 9. So let's see if you can knock Amanda Spratt off the top notch. So your minute starts now with gravel or mountain bike?
Mountain bike.
Tour de France or the Giro d'Italia?
Giro d'Italia.
Favorite climb?
Mont Ventoux.
Best time to ride? Coffee stop, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Wout van Aert or MVDP? Okay. Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Who is your cycling hero growing up?
Probably Marianne Vos.
Okay. Fair enough. Your favourite kit that isn't EF?
Canyon.
Yeah. Servo snack?
Mars bar.
Yeah. Favourite song?
Oh. There's like a new one called Desire.
I haven't heard it.
Good.
But I'm 35, so I'm pretty out of the loop. I am realising that my music is now classic rock.
Yeah.
But we at time, and I think, so we got up to favourite song, Desire. Do you know who it's by?
Yes. Ian Asher and Ollie Alexander.
Ian Asher and Ollie Alexander. I'll put it on a spin tomorrow. You also, do you want to know how many you got?
Yes.
11. So you beat Spratty. You are now in top spot on the quickfire questions. You don't get anything except the pride of knowing that you can answer a random assortment of questions with no control faster than Amanda Spratt, which is, I don't know, something to hang your hat on.
Oh,
All right.
I'll take anything I can get these days.
That's it, mate. So let's get stuck in. So you just got back from Iceland and you are having a bit of a rest because I believe that you've done yourself in, you let yourself down and you've given yourself a bit of an injury. So do you want to update us on what's going on there?
Yeah, like I've had back pain for a decent amount of time. And it's just slowly sort of gotten worse and worse. And like I've been doing like physio, but it just wasn't really like happening. And then I got a scan on that, and I've sort of like slipped a couple of discs in my back. And it's probably just over time, but it's a bit of a pain because it sort of causes a bit of numbness in the leg and things. So at first I was worried that I had this iliac artery thing, but luckily it's not that.
Jumping on the bandwagon. Everyone's getting the iliac artery.
As soon as you get a numb leg, everyone's like, that's it. You're done.
Just start ripping up your contract straight away. That's tough. So what's the recovery process? Well, I guess what's the diagnosis for that first? Like, is it going in for a scan thinking the worst? Were you pretty nervous?
Not really. Like, I think after my luck of this year, I was like, oh, it could be anything. And I think like I just got an MRI done for it, and it sort of can tell you how sort of far the disc is moving. And like some people I know, they keep going and keep pushing, but the problem is it's like it just doesn't. The problem is that if it keeps moving, then it can slip further and further into the nerves, and then you really end up with a lot of permanent damage. So, and a lot of people get cortisone injections to make it feel better, but that doesn't really help it in moving back into place. So, like at the moment, I'm getting some injections which create space between the vertebra, and then like with a lot of physio rehab over time, like it should maybe within 4 to 5 weeks, they should slowly move back into place if I'm doing the right things. So I'm banished to the pool as well.
So you're back to swimming, back to your roots.
Yeah.
Do you do much swimming? In the readout, it said that you got a bit sick of chasing the black line. Do you normally do any swimming to keep fit, or?
I haven't done any swimming in a good 2 or 3 years. I normally only do it when I'm injured. So I said this the other day. I was like, there's a small lane of people in Girona who are slightly depressed, slightly not good swimmers, of just like athletes who have been banished to the pool for rehab. Because I swear whatever it's like runners, like cyclists, or even the triathletes, when they get injured, everybody just goes, oh, right, go swimming. And there's just a small lane of people who are kind of like, oh, this sucks.
Is there some sort of nod, like you're almost walking into a recovery ward or something, like a recognition, a glum recognition that you're both in this together, yeah?
Pretty much, you sort of just like accept your fate.
When you get through it, you should all go out and get matching tattoos.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So what's the recovery look like for that? Is that season done, or are you hoping to get on for some towards the end of the season?
There's a possibility for the Italian races at the end of the season. It just depends on, I guess, how it goes and how quickly they sort of want to move back into place. And in terms of like getting my core strength up and things like that, maybe adjusting my position a bit. It's sort of been maybe 3 weeks off the bike now. So they say around like 5 weeks of swimming and hiking and gym. So and then we'll see how it goes after that.
Yeah, I was going to say, are there things you can work on in the gym to help in other areas? Like, is there a way that you can make this, I guess, proactive time, or do you feel like this is just treading water at the moment?
No, it's definitely proactive. I think like it's always easy to ignore some things when you feel like you don't have the time to do it. I've always like maybe not had as good a core strength, and I think also in terms of like positioning, for me it's quite hard to get a really good bike fit because I have extremely long legs and actually a really short body and short arms.
Yeah,
So
right.
I need like a smaller frame with an extended seat post, but then I need a high stacker because my back can't bend like completely right over. So if you drop the front too far, then I can't reach the front either. So yeah, I'm a bit of a genetic nightmare for cycling.
It's interesting then that you're so good at time trialing, because that seems like it would be a position that is not natural, I guess, but you have had a pretty meteoric rise in with time trialing and also coming over from triathlon. How does that work with your positioning?
Funnily enough, it's weird because so you have the UCI rules, and I think a lot of the problem that people have is that they want more extension,
Mm.
but I actually don't need it
Yeah,
because
right.
I have shorter arms. So
Yeah.
like my legs and my back are up, and then once you go down into the position, like if I can improve my sort of core strength, then yeah, the hope, like normally I can sort of sit in that position for a while because it's not as uncomfortable for me because I'm not having to be so cramped like most
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, no, I think I get you. So the position is sort of having your arms up above your head, and you're able to sit in that position. But if you are, I guess, in the old school time trialing position where they have the arms sort of thrown right out the front, you'd really struggle with that.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
sort of
much.
the TT position, though, isn't it? So is that one of the reasons why you kind of had Jack of the TT? I mean, what was it that made you jump over from time trialing to cycling?
Just pure time trial, I think.
Oh, sorry, I guess from triathlon.
Well, the thing with triathlon was like I got into triathlon because I wanted to hang out with my husband more. So I started swimming, I started riding, I started running, but like as a kid growing up, I hated running. Like I could not stand the sport. And I used to sit in the bushes at cross country with my friend, and then like a friend's dad would take us on the quad bike to the finish. And like it just I got
Only in
into
New Zealand, hey.
I
It's
got
such
into
a
it
New
and it was
Zealand.
fine, but like then yeah, I sort of took up the running, and me being like we were saying, you know, cyclists are really like fixated people. I was like, oh, I need to improve my running. So I just ran and ran and ran because I was coaching myself, and then I was like, oh, my legs hurt a lot.
Mm.
And then I developed like stress fractures in my legs and took the time off the running and did some of the cycling, and that's how I ended up doing like New Zealand age group nationals, because it kind of gave me something else to look forward to and look into, and then I was trying something different, and yeah, that's sort of
And you
like how it
won.
happened. Yeah.
You won. So the first time you just think, oh, I'm going to jump over to uh, have a go on the bike, and I've got it that you win the under 23 national TT championship in 2022. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then by 2023, you're on Jumbo-Visma. That must have been whiplash. Did you have to get some physio for that, or?
Yeah, it just like that was it. Like once the ball was rolling, and like it's like a lot of these things, it sometimes just happens really, really fast. And
Mm.
before I like knew anything of what I was doing, then I was there, like racing in the world tour and in a foreign country, and it's like you kind of you don't ever take the moment to sit and be like, shit, like that happened really fast. You kind of just keep going with it.
Mm. Have you ever sort of sat back after? Like I don't know, I see a lot of Instagram shots of you guys at the end of the season, sort of in some really exotic places. Have you ever just sort of sat back at that time and reflected and thought, shit, eh? Or
Yeah. Yeah, I think now I have more so, like, that I've been in it for a while, whereas at the time I think I just thought that was, like, normal. That's just how it happens for most people, which it isn't.
mm,
Like, a lot of people don't end up sort of just falling into it. Um, yeah, so I think, like, now I've taken more time to be like, oh wow, that was rather rapid, and I can also see why, like, it's taken a lot of learnings in a short period of time.
yeah, and there's a lot of talk around, the peloton getting younger and younger and there being a lack of experience in the peloton. What was that like coming from triathlon, where it's essentially an individual sport, to jumping over and having to ride in the bunch of
It was
some pretty
so it was so hard. Like, and I
mm,
think that's one of the bits you miss out on. And it's when my first race in Europe was with a small continental team, and yeah, like it's hard, like, because you jump into it and you just do it because it's unknown, and it's actually not. It's almost not scary because you don't know what you're doing till you're doing it. And I remember starting my first race, and like, we hit cobbles within the first kilometer of the race starting, and I'd never ever seen a cobblestone in my life. Like, I didn't know what this thing was, and I couldn't work out, but why by lap 2, like, I couldn't hold on to my handlebars anymore. So I was like holding like this because my wrist pretty much gave way because I was doing it all wrong. And yeah, I was with another friend from New Zealand, and I remember we got to the end and we were like celebrating because we just made it to the finish, you know. Yet, like, we were like, we survived. We've made our first race, you know. This is what people say is going to be the worst thing, and we've done it. And I think that's a bit that a lot of people miss, is that you just go from having not, and that's sometimes the biggest error in cycling is like when you do sign these youngsters, and a lot of teams expect a lot from them and miss a bit, like, how inexperienced they actually are.
yeah. And how do you, so you must be seeing younger and younger riders. Kat Ferguson's a great example. She's a fantastic rider and she's produced some incredible results, but she must be struggling in order to keep up with something. You've got her on one end of the spectrum, and then riders like Marianne Vos, who you've identified earlier, that are, they've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
How what's it like in the peloton with that? Is there nerves around this inexperience that's coming into the peloton, or do you just in the heat of the moment just trust?
I think no, I think there still is a lot of nerves in that way. And I think it's hard because, there is a lot of youngsters out there now like Kat Ferguson, and she can win a lot of races. And I remember in the Vuelta, one of the stages, I think it was wet this year, and she was really upset because she crashed in the final, and she was like, oh, but I should have won, and she was racing for her team. It's like, wait, hold on, like, this is literally your first year, like, you don't need to take on all the pressure. Like, okay, of course there's always an opportunity for her to win, but she shouldn't be relied on as much as someone like Marianne Vos with that level of experience.
Mm.
And I think it's learning how to do that within your team. But I think, maybe the level of pressure is a lot on the riders at the moment, and that's actually quite hard for a lot of the young riders to deal with because they haven't been in those situations before. They don't know how to react. They don't know how to cope with the pressure. And that's also not something that is, like, you don't get taught that in your team. It's something you have to learn to you just learn to deal with it.
Mm.
But yeah, I think, like you say, how someone like Marianne Vos, I think it's probably more nerve-wracking for her in the peloton because she has these youngsters who are almost like willing to die for it. And she's like, hold on, like, this is a bit too much. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, because you had sort of mentioned, and we are sort of straying a little bit here, but I want to unpack your first race. You said that you sort of don't have any fear because you just kind of get in there and get to work. Do you remember your first crash that you saw or that you were a part of that was like a bit of a, okay, this, maybe I should get paid danger money for this? Or was there a moment where you thought, oh, the reality of the sport struck home?
No, I think like I remember was my second race actually ever, and it was in Belgium again. And these crashes, they started happening, and they were like one after the other. And then in the end, they had like, I went past one of them, and there was honestly just blood like all over the ground, and I was like, what is this? I remember like it splashed back up my leg like on my bike, and I was like, oh, what is this? Like, why am I doing this? I want to go home. This is a nightmare. And then they ended up having to like neutralize the race for a bit, because then we ran out of ambulances, which has happened as well in the men's race recently. And then I was thinking to myself, I was like, what have I got myself into? Like, this is ludicrous. And I still some days still think that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, I had one stack. I had a brief moment where I decided I wanted to be pro. And I had one stack descending, and I still can't descend after that. I can't imagine what it's like to have to see something like that. Like, that sounds pretty visceral, and to then be expected to just carry on and then go to work the next time. Like, you must have seen some pretty heavy crashes in there. And yeah, I mean, we're having people retiring. There was, I can't recall the name of the rider at the moment, but I think he was from Sedal. Quickstep retired recently just because he's seen too many things in cycling. So yeah, safety, and with sort of the UCI rulings coming in, where they're getting lambasted a lot with that. What are some things that you think, and again, I think I've got this question somewhere a bit later, but what are some things you think that, some practical things that could be put in place immediately that might help improve some of this?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one, because I do understand that like we're trying to search for something like to help protect the riders a bit more. And it's hard because obviously like you can come up with more protective gear. Like I remember Rusty Woods, who's retiring, he said in the Tour de France, he's like, we should be out here in hockey gear. Like, this is ridiculous. And it's whether like the peloton is willing to wear, like, you've got to have people come up with some sort of like innovation almost, and then have it as something that you can use or not. Because I think it's really hard when they're making handlebars smaller, but then it causes an impact on the women because like we've all got smaller shoulders than the men. So actually that can cause more damage than making it safer. And everybody's looking for how to get faster, like all the teams, they're also partially part of the problem, because it's like, how can we make our riders faster than the other ones? So then they come out with more and more, all these bikes that go X% faster, all these tires, all these, and yeah, to be honest, I actually don't know, because I don't know how you make it safer. It's also, do you have less riders like in a world tour race? Is there too many riders? Is there too many inexperienced riders, inexperienced teams that like are not causing the crashes but contributing towards them? And if maybe you saw a lot less crashes in Tour of Romandie because there was only 60 riders there, 4 teams weren't there. There was actually, I think it was
5, yeah.
Yeah, 4 or 5 teams weren't there. And actually, when you look at the race itself, there was quite minimal amounts of crashing. But then that's hard again, because also you want people to race, but I remember my first World Championships in Glasgow, there was 208 starters or something.
Yeah.
Like, how are you getting 208 riders on a piece of road like that's 2 car widths apart. It's, of course, and you've got maybe now instead of having 2 riders that can win, you've got 20. So they're all fighting because they all know that they can win. Whereas maybe before there was so many good top riders in each individual team that they weren't fighting as hard. I don't know.
It is a rock and a hard place because there's 2 things. One, you could put everything on a motorway, but no one wants to watch that because everyone wants to see narrow lanes and towns and cobbles and things like that. And I don't think it's something that's necessarily unique to cycling. Soccer's trying to work out what to do with traumatic brain injuries and headers, and similar with rugby league and things. At the end of the day, I think we're trying to work out how to make sports safer that are inherently dangerous, and we can only work with the tools that we've got. Jumping back on track. So you mentioned that you have Marianne Vos as a huge idol. You sign with Visma, and then after a year, you jump over to EF. I would have thought that as someone that's identified her as an idol rider, you would have stuck around a bit longer. What did EF offer you that managed to pull you away from a team like Visma?
Like I said, like when I got into cycling, I really didn't actually know what I was getting into. And Marianne Vos will still probably always be my favorite rider because actually she's one of the nicest people I've met in the peloton. I remember my first race with her. I was supposed to get to the front to make an attack up a climb at Binder, and I couldn't get there, and I was too embarrassed to talk into the radio because I didn't want to say that like I couldn't get there because everybody else could. So why couldn't I? And I remember she came all the way to the back of the peloton because she just knew I'd be there. She picked me up and took me all the way to the front. And I remember being more petrified of dropping her wheel than anything else because I was like, I will never live this down ever again. And sort of this small kind of halo opened up around me. I remember Anya Lowe, like she went to jump on Mariana's wheel and then saw that I was there and sort of let me through. And
Yeah, wow.
I'll always remember that. And to be honest with you, I'll probably always let Anya in because of that one moment, just when it's your first race with the team, and I was just petrified. And she really looked after me. But in saying that, like one rider, I think also doesn't make you stay. And like I signed to the team, and the manager at the time was my now manager of the team, Ezra Tromp, and she, we'd had some chats and things, and she always had a really good directory for me. She was always really open with me on what I needed to do, and also she really cares about people's like overall health. Not that I sort of saw it as much at the time. And yeah, I always just kind of felt safe if I was with her, and she left my team halfway through the year. And I think, yeah, the environment of Jumbo is really like, people always say you find teams that are for you and teams that aren't for you, maybe. And I'm the kind of person that I'm really regimented until I'm not. And then I sort of like need to have some sort of outlet every so often. And instead of doing that, EF has incorporated like a lot of fun into the cycling, as well as also structure that I can learn. Because I mean, when I got into cycling, really, I was still a kid. And having a super regimented schedule of training, eating, like, and that is our life and that is what we do. But at some point, I think if you do that day in and day out, you will explode.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I knew that like at some point I would need to change and find an environment that suits my personality a bit better.
So it was a bit of a square peg, round hole kind of thing.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, anyway, it does feel like there's almost, I'm not trying to suggest that the riders are in any way that they're all human beings, but there does seem to be a robotic nature to the Visma or the way the team operates. It seems to be very calculated and almost very algorithmic. Is that a fair? Yeah.
Definitely. And like, to be honest with you, there's a lot of people in cycling who absolutely love that. And that is what they want. That's what they need. But that's not me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And what's the vibe like? I was just having a look at the whole team list, and it looks like a cast of absolute characters. What's it like on EF? Is it good times?
It's just really good because you get a bunch of people from all different nationalities. So there's none of this kind of like one nationality sort of clique going on anywhere. It's like a bunch of kind of misfitted people who have all ended up in one place together. And I think it's fun because everybody, when you join that team, you accept the fact that like there's going to be some weird personalities. There's going to be some maybe conflict, but also like a lot of fun that goes on and a lot of like, to be honest, all the girls in the team, like they're all my best mates. Like I get along with every single one of them. Like I'm not saying that we don't ever argue because actually the people in the team have a really strong personality, but I think that's one of our best traits, that everybody has an opinion and it's all weird and it's funky, and some of the stuff that the girls come out of with, I'm like, I've never heard of anybody think like this in my life. But it really opens your eyes, and actually for some reason it works really, really well for us.
If you've had a crap day and you just want to sit on the couch and watch movies with one of them, who are you picking?
Henrietta.
Yeah.
Just a Kiwi.
Nice.
Like, we have a mutual sort of like, you know, we just know when one of us just isn't having a good day, and like we get quite often room together, and like it's very easy just to sit in the room and not talk together, but then we could talk till 2 a.m. as well.
Yeah. It's funny what you say about the sort of clash of having a chat to Spratty. She said something similar about the Trek team. Just the fact that there isn't a national clique means that, you know, you get to experience a bunch of people with different languages, different cultures, and it's the stuff that you have different about you that makes it so much fun to be on a team like that, because you're constantly being exposed to new things. So a quick look at the season. Your EF team is very represented in the national colours. So you've got a Canadian, a US, and a New Zealand road champion, and also a French national TT champion. That correct?
Yep.
And outside of that, I think I'm right in saying the results have been a bit lean. Having a look at the season, what's the chat around that at the moment? Is there a desire to really make this second half count, or does the team feel like they're sort of one good win away from turning the season around?
Yeah, I think for us, like, it has been an interesting year. Like, we have had new riders come in, like Cedrine, and like we are always about in a few years to come. And I think, you know, last year we had some really amazing results. And like it's hard to back that up. And I think people definitely expected us to, and I'm not saying that there's not that desire within our team, but we are very like development focused and still very new. You know, a lot of us have only worked together for 1 year. So I don't think last year was a fluke, and it's different this year. But I think, yeah, in terms of learning to actually ride for a GC rider as well, because it's not something we ever had to do last year, and it was really unfortunate what happened at the Tour de France. And I think as a team and management, we're still also learning how to ride maybe grand tours with a GC rider, but also go for stage wins, because it's two very different things. And depends what you put your focus on. But yeah, I think we're gonna have a really good back end of the season. It's been tricky with some injuries with some of us as well, like all teams. And whether it's this back end of the season or next year, I know that like it's not far away with the way that a lot of the girls are going.
Yeah, well, it's easy to, I guess, kind of think that the team's been around for a while because EF in the men's peloton has become quite a dominant force at a fantastic tour, but they've been around for quite a while. Whereas you guys, as a team, 2023. So what's that? 2 years to build, and so yeah, I think it's completely fair to sit back and say, well, we are in a build phase. Certainly a brand new team. So yeah, really exciting to see what's coming. And in regards to yourself as well, you are touted as one of those GC hopefuls. What's that build phase looking like for you? What are you hoping for towards the end of this season and into next year? Are there goals for the Tour de France next year?
Yeah, I think I'm still, this year I would have liked to have progressed a lot faster than I have. I've sort of been it's been a hard year because I feel like I'm just going backwards. So how do you start again from that? What is really, really challenging. And I also feel a bit like it's hard because I'm not sure where I stand in terms of GC climbing. I'll always love doing time trial. It's something that I really, really enjoy. And I think next year, to be honest, I'll probably just start again with a bit of a blank canvas, and see where it goes and what I enjoy a lot again, because I can't put the pressure on myself to to be a GC rider, to go for stage wins and things at the moment, because I just don't know how I'm going at the moment.
And what's the support around you for that? Because you have had a pretty rough year. What's that look like on the inside on the team? Do they have, I guess, like life coaches kind of helping you forward map what you want to do? What's the chatter around developing you as a rider and as a person?
Yeah, we have some really good. Everybody's really good in the team. We have some psychologists, some in terms of like the DSs, and I think we bring together someone from every department every so often to have a conversation about how it's going, like what we can do, where we can move forward. And I think that's the only thing that's kept me quite grounded this year, is like having some small focuses to work on. And I think the team's really good in that they don't just leave you to kind of rot.
Mm. Yeah. No, good. And what was the process? Because again, having a look at results, your Giro wouldn't have been what you would have wanted it to be. How do you walk out of that? How do you get your head back in it, especially now that you've had this incident? What's that look like? Who are you talking to? What's the chat? Is it take your time, we'll build, or are you talking about future goals? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I knew at the Giro I was gonna struggle. I was gonna suffer to make it round, because I broke my elbow actually at Burgos, one of my first race back after also not making it to the Ardennes. And it's just not the same. Like, okay, you can achieve some things in 3-4 weeks of training, but not much when a lot of it's just been on the trainer. And I think it's easier to get your mind around that, because you're not in the same kind of condition and shape that maybe you have been. And I've always worked as well with my own psychologist from Australia, and we've worked together since I got into cycling. And I think when you have someone who knows you really, really well, it actually helps, because they keep you really grounded in where you've been, where you've come from, and, you know, what you said so many years ago, what you want out of this. It's nice to have just a few people around you that know really who you are and what you've come from.
Mm. Well, let's jump through to some stuff going on in cycling at the moment. Obviously, the Tour de France was fantastic, and it's one of the. I think the Tour de France at the moment shows how exciting women's cycling is as a product. But then we jump, as a direct contrast, a couple of weeks later, we've got this fast at the Tour de Romandie Feminine. Do you know what happened with that? There's a lot of, it seems like a lot of she said, he said kind of thing between the UCI and the teams. Are you able to give any clarity about what the hell actually happened there? Or have you been keeping your headphones on while you're in Iceland?
Yeah, I think, you know, I heard a lot from different sides. And it's still actually, I think, even to the riders and a lot of the organizations, people still are kind of not 100% sure on what went on there. And like, I think from what I understand from a lot of people, it's sort of this, you know, it's something we want, this, like we were talking about safety on the bikes, and it's something that we need in terms of being able to track people and find where they are. And it's almost a bit like, you know, the UCI want to use these at Rwanda. But we, as teams, we weren't notified till like a day or two before that it was going to be used there specifically, and that they didn't have enough for everybody. And I think, you know, it's nice. We do need to test them, but I think there's a time and a place, and taking it to one of the highest level races in the whole year, you know, a World Tour race, and saying, here, have a go at this, is maybe not the time and the place to do it, especially when the rules haven't been clarified. And I think it's a bit like cycling. They blow a lot of things out of proportion. And the teams went back and tried to argue their piece, and instead they just came back and said, no, you're disqualified, which is a shame that two organizations that want the same thing, people to race bikes, because the UCI, you know, that's what they're there for, and the teams are there for, couldn't manage to discuss something that's actually not, it's not that dramatic. I mean, it's something to put on the bike to track you so that you're safe, but I feel like it's become something that's really, really massive and didn't need to be.
Is this a situation of two sides playing politics and the people that end up getting stuck in the middle of the riders?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because, I don't know, for anyone that's been head in the sand and hasn't seen the story, essentially the UCI's come to the teams with these GPS tracking chips, which is something that's been called for a while, is my understanding, so that we don't have incidents where we have riders crashing and not being identified for a long period of time, like we had in, I think it was Worlds a couple of years ago. So the UCI has gone to the teams, from what I can see, and said, you need to put these on the bikes, you need to select the rider, and you need to do it. And the teams have said, no, you can select the rider and you can do it. And it's just led to an impasse where 5 teams have been disqualified from the race. I've seen Amanda Spratt on Instagram. Her Trek team seems to be making the most of it, just having a damn good time doing a training camp. What's the talk around the women that are doing it for EF? Are they frustrated? Like, there must be. This is something that you've built for. This is an opportunity for a lot of these people. I'm assuming the team that's sent is not similar to the Tour de France team, because a lot of those people are having some time off. So this would be opportunities for riders that wouldn't have got that at the Tour. What's the talk like? People must be devastated.
Yeah, I think it's really, really disappointing for a lot of riders, because this back half of the calendar, like, you know, there's not as many races maybe that the team enters, because, you know, a lot of it is organized around the Tour de France. And, you know, the riders who didn't do the Tour de France have been sort of sitting, waiting and training to get to go again. And, you know, sometimes that is also a good opportunity, because you don't have the Tour de France riders that were selected at those races, and gives other riders a different opportunity to perform. And girls who are out of contract, are looking for results for next year. It's really the final chance that they have right now to sign things and get themselves sorted. And it also really changes the preparation that a lot of riders are having for things like Rwanda, because you just can't create that race intensity. And a lot of the girls I know, that's their last race before another big training block, before they go to World Championships. And you take that out, and you take races away from girls, opportunities to get new contracts. And it does actually make a really big impact on the riders.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one person who's been quite outspoken about this is your team owner, so Jonathan Vaughters. Has that brought some heat on the team? I mean, I know I think he put a post up about a cease and desist letter from the UCI. It sounds like things are getting pretty intense there. How's that impact the team, and how you guys are responding to this?
I think like what Jonathan said is definitely not up to us. He has, free speech. And he is an outspoken kind of guy. And in terms of that, like, not so many of us have not received anything in terms of what he's said. People tend to address him, and he addresses people himself. He's not scared of doing that. So, I think for us as a team, what he said is what he says.
Yeah. And from the outside looking in, I love people like him because he actually says what he's feeling. I personally wish there was a bit more of that in cycling. I kind of appreciate, I might not always agree with things that people say. It's one of the reasons why I like Evenepoel, because he is so outspoken and he says what's on his mind, and it doesn't always make him friends, but tell you what, it's interesting. And yeah, I mean, you get some insight, which is always appreciated. So let's jump on, because there was something that you put up during the Tour de France. And before we touch on this, I want to frame this, because I don't want this to come across, I guess I'm conscious about the way that this can come across, and it can sort of seem like vultures just picking at a carcass here. And I certainly don't want that to be the perception. So I want to contextualize why I'm interested in this. So when I was in high school, I really struggled with my weight. And I sort of, around the time I was 14, I started skipping meals. I'd leave lunches at home or trade them away to friends. I was never diagnosed with an eating disorder, but I definitely had one. And when I found cycling in the early 20s, my early 20s, one of the things that really attracted me to it was that it was not normal, or it was normalized to not eat. So I would often skip meals at work, and when people would say, "Oh, why are you, it's lunch, why are you eating a rice cracker?" Well, it's for cycling. And it gave me an excuse mechanism, because people equated cycling with healthy. And so they didn't question what were obvious signs of an eating disorder, because, well, it must be something that's linked to being healthy. So I am doing better now. I'm always a bit disappointed with the way that I look, but I'm certainly, I've accepted I'm a dad now, and there's limitations around what I can do. And I also just really like chocolate. So I'm coming to terms with it. But with this, you put out an Instagram during the tour, and it really struck home to me, because it's something that was very real to me. So in that, you talked about things like losing your hair, brittle bones, poor body function. Do you want to talk to that and your experience in this space?
Yeah, I think, now I'm not as afraid of saying it. I think it's really something that I've dealt with myself, and a lot of the women in the peloton have, whether they admit it or not. You see it time and time again, through a lot of different people, because you always think it's not going to be me. I'm not the person, like, I'm hard. Like I I can keep going. I don't need to do what they say. I can train harder than everybody else. I can, and then at some point, like, the wheels start falling off, and whether they fall off completely or not is neither here nor there. And I felt it, like, when I got into cycling, like you say, it's an environment that, like, it's completely normalized to not eat. And actually a lot of people run away from having, I think, eating disorders by getting into cycling. Because as you say, it's covered up. I've been on rides with people and groups of males and females, and they joke and they're like, oh, I'm going to go on a raw chicken diet, or like as a joke. But it's like jokes like this, and they go on, and people are like, oh, but I don't need to eat that. It's not in my plan today, or and they use it as an excuse to kind of run away from the fact that, like, they are slightly disordered in their eating. And it's I know that cycling in terms of power to weight is important, but I think it really, for me, you join the teams and you have, like, and for sure it's all the riders. So you have really professional riders like Pauline, and she is so well monitored. She has everything on offer to her. She has all the dietitians. She knows what she's doing. She's done it before. She knows what's a good weight for her, what works for her. But the problem in that is, and then you have a little kid like me who got into cycling at 20, and she spends all of her rides riding with guys who tell her that their body fat percentage is 7%. And coming from a non-sporting family, no background knowledge, and you think, like, oh, that's what I need to do. That works for them. That's what's normal, right? And so then you join these teams, and they're like, wow, your power is amazing if you just lost another kilo, and it's always just a little bit more and a little bit more. And before you know where you are, like, as I say, you start getting weird things happening during the night. Your heart, like, you get heart palpitations. It's another, like, effect of it. Your hair's falling out. You're exhausted, but somehow you're still running on these fumes. And then at some point, the fumes sort of start to run out. And you can only go so long. And there's a lot of riders who, luckily for them, they actually get injured and they're forced to rest for a little while. And then they come back and do the same thing again and again and again, until, maybe it doesn't work out at one point. And a lot of the girls they sign now are these young climbers that come through and they go really, really well for 2 years, and then they just disappear off a cliff.
Mm. There must be a lot of pressure as well. Like, it's one thing, and when we talked about the fact that we were going to broach this, we both agreed that we don't want to make this personal or targeted towards any specific rider. It's not a conversation about what riders are. But one thing that you did mention is that some teams have the structures in place and the ability to monitor that and do it, I guess, within what would be considered relative safety, monitoring from health professionals or the like. And then other teams would not. But I think one of the concerns is that it becomes a bit of an arms race. It's great if the top teams are able to do it, but then that does, I guess, put pressure. That pressure must push down.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as soon as you almost get into it, it's the first thing. Even when I started just riding for fun in New Zealand, some of the first coaches I ever spoke to, they're like, oh yeah, but once you hit 16, 17, you need to start losing your puppy fat. Now, like, it doesn't seem like those kind of comments will do anything, but when you hear them every single day, it's like anything. Of course you start to believe it. You put trust in the people around you and the information you're given, and it's like anything. If you go and ride with people every single day and they also have that same thought that that's how it works, that's what you need to do, and they are talking about that every single ride, of course, you believe it. Yeah,
well, it's like we said, it becomes normalized. I was on the ride on the weekend and my bunch is we're not winning the Tour de France next week. But one of the guys there, I went. This was the first ride I'd done. I've been sick for about a week, so I was feeling pretty good about myself. I did some exercise, so I thought, you deserve a brownie. And while I was getting that brownie, I saw a muffin as well. And so my eyes, I thought, well, why not? Treat yourself, So I got the muffin and the brownie, and I'm sitting out there, and a guy comes out, and normally you get a brownie, and someone said, "Oh, why are you not having one today?" And he said, "Oh, I've put on a bit of weight." Dude looks fantastic. I would kill to be in the shape that he is. But again, I'm sitting there enviously thinking, well, I'm chomping on my brownie and my muffin, but I'm sitting there thinking, I wish I had your body shape because he's skinnier than me. And I find as a cyclist, I'll be like sitting on a train and I'll see someone who's like super skinny. And I just think, I wish I had that body shape. It's like, it's so ingrained and it is normalized. And I think that's one of the things that really touched me in your post. Like, I fell into that because the guys that I was watching on TV, I was watching Andy Schleck and I wanted to be a climber. And I was just looking at that guy. And the only way you can get there is by completely stripping yourself. And we were talking about body fat percentages and things like that. Like, it does trickle down. How do you prevent that though? Like, at the end of the day, it comes down to physics, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's something that we discussed about a lot in the team. It's really interesting because, there's nowhere where people are required, like teams aren't required to provide you with that kind of information. Nobody, like, you don't need to know. Only when things start going wrong do you start to understand that, like there's this thing called bone density and that actually has an important impact on your life, but also your cycling and in terms of your hormones and everything else. And nobody's required to give you that kind of information. And also, there's organizations, which is one of the ones that we find the most interesting, like sport climbing. Now, females in sport climbing, they are required to give their federations a bone density scan, which a lot of the teams do when you are made to sign to a team, and give a blood test to show your hormone levels. And it's quite interesting because if they don't reach certain levels, they're not allowed to compete. And I know, like, a lot of people online and stuff, they're like, oh, well, that's just what it is. Cycling is just like that, and that's what you have to sacrifice. But it shouldn't be, because, there's some comments that have been thrown around, like one sort of mother, and she said, oh, as a mother of a high-level athlete, we do our best to keep our daughter healthy as possible, but it's about keeping her healthy for her sport, not real life. But this is real life. Like, what we do is real life. This is our jobs. And it, like a lot of people say, it doesn't last forever. So what are you going to do after cycling? I don't want to be the woman who's pushed around in her 40s by my dad who's 80 because I can't walk around anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's not fair on them either.
So but that's at the end of the day, I guess it comes down to, and I think in the media there is some responsibility here, but where does the responsibility lie? Like, is this something that needs to be done? Is this something that the Cycling Alliance needs to have a look at before it becomes, because I think the chooks left the hen house when it comes to men's cycling. Like, that's something that's pretty tough to reel back. But I think this is something that is maybe something you could, using another metaphor, you could potentially put Pandora back in the box here.
Yeah. I think it's something that, like, the UCI need to look at, and the Cycling Alliance, but also the teams themselves have got to want it. Because it's like you say, a lot of people right now, they're like, oh, but the men's don't get this conversation. They don't get the pressure. Like, they're comparing, both Tour de France riders and Pogacar and Pauline, and it's like she's got a lot of stick from it, and no one questions, like, that Pogacar lost weight, and that's true. But the problem is they're two different sports still. Like, it's they're two very differently run sports, and the women aren't men. Like we never will be, and it's that whole thing. You also can't train women like men because genetically we're just different. We are, and we always will be. So I think, as you say, I think it's something that can be done before the sport completely explodes into what men's cycling is.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, bearing some responsibility of that, it's the media that has fueled this, and it can at times feel like the press would rather watch the Real Housewives of the Tour de France than they would be covering the actual Tour de France. How do you see the discrepancies in regards to, you touched on it just then, the way that the women's and the men's sport is covered? I think it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's completely different. And I think the media, they also have to treat it differently. But it's the way you do the questions, do the posts, and a lot of it was a shame because Pauline did get a lot of shit for what she did when actually what she did was really amazing. She's the first French rider to win the Tour de France, but instead everybody just focused on her weight. But it's how you portray it. She did it in a really controlled manner, in a good environment, and all these things. But they just went, oh, she just lost too much weight, and everyone's losing their shit because that's not okay. But it is okay in how she did it, but it's not okay because it's a serious problem of a lot of riders ending up, left in the gutter with all these health problems because they didn't receive the same treatment, the same information.
Would you say it's not that Pauline is the issue here, but what she has done is taken the top off something, or she's shown the tip of an iceberg? She's not the issue, but as a result, she's sort of unpeeled something that is significantly larger.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was something it's been shoved behind the scenes for a while, and then suddenly someone set the lid off, and everybody decided to also give their piece, and that's why it erupted so fast.
And there was such an urgency to turn riders against each other. Marlon Reusser came out, and that was all over the headlines everywhere about how she said she thinks it's dangerous. There seemed to be at least a concerted effort to try and turn Demi Vollering against Pauline Ferrand-Prévot there. Surely yeah.
They're just looking for a story, the drama, they want to stick riders against each other and make it out like, it's some movie, but it's actually not. Like, a lot of the time we all end up on teams together, people that maybe we've been pitted against, or, we still have to ride together. We still have to function in the sport. So for sure, there'll always be rivalries and people that don't like each other. But I think making the media is more focused on making people causing a drama, some sort of them against them. Oh, this person said this person said that, instead of what the actual problem and the story is.
So what should we focus on? So, what can the media do? And I guess I include myself in this because here we are having a conversation about it. When it comes to covering women's cycling, what are the things that you think the media should be focusing on? I mean, for one, to start, probably focusing on the fact that a French woman won the Tour de France.
Yeah. Those, I think it's like, you've got to go into it and think about, okay, what do I want to get out of the story? And I think a lot of the media need to look and see, okay, am I trying to cause some sort of drama, some issue, instead where it's like, oh, Pauline just did one of the best performances ever on a climb of an hour, or, this person had a crash like Cedrine. Can I get the story and things from her instead of, and I know people always want some clickbait, of course everybody, that's how a lot of people want drama and gossip. But I think it's important for them to think about before they go into it with all their questions, like what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to bring the sport up, like dissect something that's happened, instead of writing it in a way that kind of puts people against each other, puts a lot of shit on the sport. Yeah,
well, it's interesting because I think it's so easy for people to say, oh, well, they're covered the same. But I think the interesting thing about this Tour de France is I think there is a real clear juxtaposition between the way that the Pogačar and Visma rivalry was covered in the men's Tour de France versus the way that this Demi Vollering and Pauline Ferrand-Prévot rivalry was covered in the women's Tour de France. And the Pogačar one is friendly competition, and the Demi Vollering one is golden cages, and do you need to lose more weight in order to be able to be competitive in the Tour de France? Like, there is sexism. That's what it is.
They did it last year as well with Demi when she crashed and Cassia won. Cassia put in an amazing performance to hold on by 4 seconds. Instead, they were more focused on the fact that, okay, I don't think they 100% asked Demi, but they were more focused on the fact the way the SD Works team was apparently, falling apart, and they were all against each other, and also that then Demi and Cassia were having a fight and all of this. And I think it's a bit of a shame, because every single year it's sort of, rather than focused on the person and their performance, it becomes like there's like, they always seem to somehow like make it a competition between that the two riders hate each other, which I think is definitely not true.
They steal the spectacle at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think the men's Tour de France this year, there was the opportunity to go for that narrative, but it's just not, that thread's not pulled on in the same way. Yeah. All right, well, with that, I like to end on an uplifting note. So at the end of each interview, I like to ask the rider for one piece of advice that they would impart on a junior. So if you had one nugget of wisdom in your back pocket that you could give to a future rider, what would it be?
I'd say, if you can, before you like fully get into cycling, if you can find a tight circle of people that you can trust and understand that they have good advice, good knowledge, they'll have your back, a friend that will let you sleep on her couch in her apartment, like, hold them as close as possible to you, because that's the relationships you got to put your energy into, and that will keep you alive in the sport, instead of trying to put all your energy into all different like areas. If you keep those connections really close to you, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
As long as you have a couple of people to lean on.
That has actually been a comment. I think Story gave similar advice, sort of have good people around you, people that you trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Especially if you're prone to locking yourself out of your apartment.
Yep. Or accident.
Look, yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Kim. Genuinely means the world to me, you sitting down. And genuinely honoured to be interviewing people like you. So thanks heaps for your time. To everyone interested, if you aren't, jump over and follow Kim on Instagram. It's at Kimberly Cadzow. And while you're there, give her post a like and help it boost that algorithm. Speaking of algorithms, if you could take the time to hit subscribe on your platform of choice, that would really help the pod. And if you're on Spotify, 5-star reviews for our 5-star guest. And thanks all for listening. Appreciate it.